All right, so I'm making this video because Cass got a response to what was on like the question on Instagram in terms of getting some information about what's going on in the world and finances and such. So the big thing is that I do this for a living. So I've been doing this for 16 years as a financial planner. I have my own advisory team now. The big thing is that just so I don't get in trouble with work, any information that I tell people on social media is my own opinion. It is not the opinion of CIBC Wood Gundy. Um, and also, I see things differently than other people in the world. So it's not like I know everything, but I'm more than happy to share the information I know because sometimes it's hard to find and get any information from people like me because there seems to be like a barrier between the information and everyday people. So this video, I'm just going to talk a bit about what's going on and how it's going to affect you. And really, like, I'll do other videos in terms of how to save money and such, but it's important to know how big of a deal it is, what's going on right now, because the government really kind of sugarcoats it. And, there's been a huge change in terms of where we're going versus where we were during COVID. All right, I had to move because the lighting was bad there with the window behind my head. So just to make things as simple as possibly can, this is not the technical way to talk about it, but here's where we're at. Okay, so for example, let's say before COVID hit, you had $500 and that bought you one of these T-Rex guys. Okay, so it'd been like that, every year. It maybe cost a little bit more money, but it was pretty steady that for $500 you always be able to buy one T-Rex Monopoly piece. Okay. During COVID, what they did is they shut everything down. Okay. So the other thing was that they made T-Rex pieces at a pretty good clip to keep up with the amount of people that wanted to buy them. Okay. So as more money was created from housing increases or whatever, there was more stuff. So like there was always an equal amount of $500 for your little T-Rex piece. Okay. COVID, they shut everything down. So now nobody's making any more T-Rex pieces. But the government decides to print another $500, right? So everybody has more money, right? They didn't really do anything for it. The government just printed it and gave it to you. But there's the same amount of T-Rexes. So obviously, if there's not any more of these being made and people still want to buy these things, there's a finite amount. So now this T-Rex costs $1,000, right? Usually that's not what happens. Usually what happens is if more people want T-Rexes, so we go back to before COVID, more people want T-Rexes, they're willing to spend money on it, they just make more T-Rexes, right? So now we're sitting in a position where, okay, how do we fix this problem? Because inflation is when the value of this thing doubles. That's not good. That's going up. It's getting much too expensive, especially if it's something that people need, right? Like nobody needs this T-Rex toy, but imagine it was food or gas, right? So how do you fix the problem? Well, the first thing you can do is make a shit ton more of these, right? People got money to spend. They want them. They need these T-Rex things. Make me more. The problem is that the way the world works now, like this guy, if I look at the bottom, it says made in, I don't know if it's going to show up there, made in China, right? China's still locking down because of COVID. You still can't get things shipped fast enough. You just don't have enough stuff coming in. All right, so you can see how this is a problem, right? Because if everything all of a sudden in Canada went up twice, like double in value, we'd be screwed, right? We'd be super screwed. And you saw a lot like during COVID how lumber prices went up so high. That's supply and demand, right? So that's one part of what's going on is that there's still a high demand for people to buy Mr. T-Rex, right? And people with more money might go, hey, I don't care. I'm going to buy the T-Rex for $1,000. Give me T-Rexes all day for $1,000. I don't care, right? Most people aren't like that. Most of us are going, well, all my life, I've only been able to afford a T-Rex for $500. Now I'm screwed. Like, where am I going to find this money? Right. So, what can the government do about this problem? Well, the first thing they can do is they can try and make it easier for stuff to come across the world. Right. It's not going to happen. Ukraine, the war in Ukraine is going to screw everything up for a long time because it's not just whether it ends tomorrow, it's the fact that um, globalization has been screwed. Like, nobody's going to go back to dealing with Russia after they did this shit. And it's going to be a long time before anybody trusts them again. So the whole world has to figure out, okay, well, where am I going to get my stuff to make my little T-Rex toys, right? So that's not really working. That's about half of what inflation is. That's why for the longest time, the government was like, oh, it's no big deal. It's going to be fine, right? We don't need to raise interest rates. Now they're going, okay, well, what else can we do? Well, if they reduce people's ability to buy the T-Rex, right? So if they take away that person's um, buying power, let's say, and doesn't have to be a person, it could be a corporation or whatever. All of a sudden, those people that are willing to buy it for $1,000 won't. So this is just some stuff to look at, right? So this just says during COVID, um, Canada spent a ridiculous amount of money on keeping the economy going, right? So you can see that all these countries did, but Canada was like just balls to the walls. You get money, everybody gets money. It was pretty wild, right? This, when we look at inflation, um, this is just every year how quickly things are going up in value. You can see that like it's been pretty steady since, you know, like back when I was born. We don't have these huge ups and downs and peaks and valleys. Like, prices have been pretty steady, so it was easy to kind of keep up, right? But now, um, this is pretty wild. Like, this hasn't happened in most of our lifetime, where the cost of things have gone up so incredibly high. Um, and then this is where our interest rates have been. So one of the big things is that, back in 2008, there was this big crash where the whole financial system almost fell apart. And that's when they first started this idea of quantitative easing, um, which is basically a fancy way of saying printing money, right? And they really haven't been able to recover from that big crash in terms of getting the economy back on its own feet, where they didn't have to do this constant money printing system. But um, the long and short of it is that, interest rates have been really low. Now they're coming up higher. How high they're going to go, nobody knows yet. But if you look at the housing index as well, this is where house prices have gone since 2020. So, there's probably a case to be made that, should this be back down here? If we go to, where interest rates are at and, go over 25 years, should interest rates be back here? Should they be back to here? Back when the last time we had inflation like this? But it's a pretty big deal, right? Because if we continue moving at this inflation rate, then it's not like we're making any more money. If anything, like what they're trying to do right now, and I mean, this is a big deal. They keep talking about how many jobs there are, right? And let's get this up here. So they keep talking about how many jobs there are and how there's all this excess capacity. And so, perfect example is there's a coffee shop up from where I work, and they say we can't open because we can't find enough people to work there. So there's like 1 million job openings. What they're essentially saying is that they want people to lose their job because there's already companies all over the world now that are cutting positions, and those people that lose their job to make up the it's not $1 million, the million empty jobs. That's like the slack in the economy, right? Thing is that those million jobs are not super great jobs, right? Um, but what they're saying is that they can make these interest rate increases, they can slow the economy down. People have the ability to lose their job and find a new one, right? Regardless if it's going to be the same quality, right? The other thing here, which is really important, is um, you know, let's say, like, we'll just use my mortgage for example. So, it's around 500,000. When COVID brought all the interest rates down, my mortgage rate was 1.28%, right? So that means a month was 2 grand. Easy peasy, right? Like, that was pretty reasonable. Now, with the way they've raised interest rates, it's at 2.53, right? So that's already a couple $100 more. Um, if you get a fixed mortgage, because mine is variable, but if you have a fixed mortgage and you get a new one, it's 5.5, right? So here's a big issue is that if they don't reduce interest rates, so this is more like where we're going and why you have to be a little bit concerned is if you have a mortgage right now, let's say at 2.5%, and you're making your payments and you guys are just barely getting by. um, Usually mortgages, you can only lock them in for 5 years. So what happens if it's 2.5%, and when you get to renewal it's 6, right? So what was it? 2.5 was 2,200. 6%, well, not 26, 6% is 3,200. Where's that money going to come from, right? That's like an extra, what, $12,000 a year. A lot of people don't have $12,000 a year, right? And this is the low interest type investments, right? If you have a line of credit, so like we have a line of credit that's revolving credit, right? So it goes every time they raise interest rates, it goes up. So if you have any money owing on that, those costs get higher and higher. So, but when you think about what they're trying to do, is if you're paying more money on your debt, then you don't have that extra $1,000 to buy stuff, right? If people don't need, like when I go back to my little T-Rex thing, if people don't need as many T-Rexes and demand goes down, then the companies will essentially lower the price, right? So if they didn't need as much stuff to come over from China, let's say, then maybe they wouldn't have to ship so much and pay such high shipping costs. They wouldn't have to hire so many employees to build the things, which means the company would be able to lower the price of the end product to try and sell it to consumer, right? So the other thing too, like companies obviously are making big profits off of, like I said, those people that don't care about the price and continue to buy it, right? So, it's going to take a while to get worked out. Now, the main thing to take away from all this, and I know it's been kind of boring, and I don't even know if people really care about this shit, but the main thing is that it's not a small issue that we're dealing with. It's something that hasn't happened for 45 years. It's something that hasn't happened. Like, you have to talk to your maybe not even your mom or dad, maybe your grandma, grandpa, to go, how was that back in the 80s when interest rates were like 10, 12%? The difference is that houses now, you have people that put down 5% on these homes. They have massive mortgages. Interest rates are, when they got over, so low. Like, people are going to get screwed if they have to renew their mortgage at a price that's, $2 grand more per month, right? Back in the 80s, a house was like 60 grand, right? So it wasn't like life changing. So that's a huge thing. So the main things to be worried about right now is interest rate costs, debt financing, right? So that's one. And then two is the fact that they're actively trying to get companies to hire less. Okay. So let's say before COVID, you were working as a cook. And then during COVID, there became a job opening and a new career, maybe working for the government doing something. I don't know, right? But it's a better paying job. Well, not the government, because the government's not going to fire you. But I mean, if like you're working for Google or something, right? So you went from being a cook to working for Google because they couldn't find enough people to fill the seats. Now Google's going to turn around and say, hey, everybody we hired in the last year, see you later. Because now our costs to borrow, our costs as a company are higher. We're not going to sacrifice our profit. So we're going to sacrifice humans, right? Now you go back to being a cook, right? Like it's unless something changes, like it's going to be a uh, pretty rough go. The main thing right now, and like I'll do other stuff in terms of like what I do. Like I'm the cheapest person in the world, so it doesn't matter whether it's COVID or whatever. I'm always just super cheap, so I think I can be helpful that way. Um, but if you have debt, you need to pay it off, right? Um, if you got to cut back, and like I do know some ways that you can save money and such. You have to really recognize that we're going to an extraordinary time because we just went through an extraordinary time, which was COVID. So it's kind of like we're getting kicked in the nuts, or sorry, I don't know. It's just getting kicked while we're down, right? So we already went through COVID. Um, you breathe a big sigh of relief. Well, this is the hangover from the COVID party, right? Um, and I mean, there's gonna be hard decisions that have to be made if these supply chains around the world don't get fixed so that we can get enough stuff, and the price of the things you need to survive keep going up in cost, right? So um, hopefully this video was helpful, and explaining kind of what's going on in a more easy to understand way. I mean, you can leave a comment or ask a question or whatever if there's something that doesn't make sense, but it is a complicated situation that I'm trying to explain to the best I can. The other thing is, I have a program that I've signed up for, and it costs me money. It doesn't cost anybody else money, but it's just something I'm trying to do with clients now. I'll leave a link to it. It's called Planswell. And so essentially it's just an online program you go into, you put in your information in terms of where you sit. Then it sends that information to me. Like it doesn't cost you anything at all. It's really a marketing tool for me to get more clients. But in this case, I don't mind trying to help people out. So you send that to me. I can take a look at it. If there's something that I see that could be helpful, or maybe I could start doing videos where I just like take a person's, confidential is of course, but just take a situation and say, this is what I would do to try and protect myself, or try and get ahead during tough times, or for the rest of your life. But it's just really, I'm not doing this to try and make money. I just think that it's not fair how all this stuff happens and people don't really know what it means, and it's also not fair how there's all this financial knowledge out there that nobody ever gets taught or gets explained really well. So yeah, just leave a comment or do the Planswell thing. The link's going to be in the description. I don't plan on being a YouTuber for the rest of my life, but if you want to see all the other videos that I'm going to make, then you can subscribe, or we'll get them posted on Instagram. All right. So also, things might not go as bad as I say. I know this is very depressing, but I'm kind of like a worst case scenario type person. Maybe the war ends, maybe inflation goes back down, maybe we get out of this in the next month and everything goes back to being rosy. It's just right now there's no indication that that's going to happen, and something would have to change. Something really drastic would have to change to all of a sudden fix this problem within the next 6 months, maybe even 5 years. Like we don't know yet. So, but sorry if that's kind of a negative Nancy opinion. Have a good one.